topic 3 we'll dive into now. Filmmaking, as we talked a little bit about you. That's kind of you're known in the community for your video work. So what got you into filmmaking? What kind of what? Let's go through. We did gaming history earlier. Let's go through filmmaking history of Christian.
Yeah, like I always say that I've wanted to be involved in filmmaking, like just ever since my childhood, and the the initial spark for that was that, like many people my age or whatever, like Jurassic Park was like a really big like first favorite movie for a lot of people, and you just never question it. You see these dinosaurs and it's just like, well, of course, yeah. I don't know how they did that, but that is just, of course. I'm just not gonna question it. But if I keep looking to the side, it's because I'm just making sure my like it's still recording. But anyways, uh, I guess in the '90s, like a really big thing on TV was like showing the behind the scenes of movies, and I just remember like just walking past the living room and they're showing a scene from Jurassic Park, and then they pause it, and then they remove the T Rex. They just take him out of there and play the rest of the scene without him in there, and like things are moving as if he's crashing, but you don't see it. And I'm like, whoa, wait, like you. That's right. Like it's always been in front of me, but I never really think about it. Like people make these things happen. Books don't just exist; people write them. Cartoons just exist; people draw them. And movies don't just exist; like they're made, like they're filmed. And just I just was just so blown away at like how like that the thought of that a person made this dinosaur happen. And so or initially, like even at a young age, I don't know how old I was when Jurassic Park came out, but whatever age that was, I was like, I want to be involved in this. And initially, it was more specifically special effects. I want to do that. I want to be able. I want to make the dinosaurs in the movies. I want to make the CGI. As I started looking into that though, and my parents were really encouraging of that. And one year, my dad even took me to South by Southwest before it was such a big festival. When it was more of of an event for, I guess, digital media and people like involved in technology. Like I was attending these seminars and like realizing, oh wow, there's a lot of art. I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of math involved in computer graphics, and I hate math, so I
Yeah.
still love movies and I still want to be a part of making movies, but I'm probably gonna marinate on this and just have it in the back of my head and not think about it too seriously. I mean, fast forward, like, and throughout the years, I look at behind the scenes and stuff, and that's kind of the part that I regret. I mean, I don't even know if regret's the word, but like when you hear the stories about your favorite filmmakers, they talk about like, oh yeah, like I was making movies in the backyard as a kid, and that kind of sucks that I was so frightened at the math and the complexity involved in that I just uh, let it be like a thing that I would say like, yes, I want to be a filmmaker, but I didn't like work towards it until I was much older and realized how I could actually take action. I think it's similar to someone that says like they want to be an astronaut, and so they just kind of say, well, that's something that I'll start taking seriously once I'm older and out of high school. Then that's when I can start applying to aerospace colleges and stuff. But they don't start trying to fly from their from their backyard as a kid. It's something that they know that they have saved for later. And that's kind of how I treated filmmaking. It was like, it's a thing. I'm just gonna enjoy high school, enjoy middle school, whatever. And once I'm older, that was just the mindset. That's when I'll take it seriously. But then in high school, someone introduced me to Robert Rodriguez. Not physically introduced me, not literally, but like they were just talking, and I walked into the conversation. They were talking about this movie came out, and someone was able to make a movie and make a name for himself for a very cheap. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they were like, yeah, this guy named Robert Rodriguez, he made his first feature film completely on his own with no money and just with the lint and nickel that he had in his pocket. And I was like, that's a thing you can do? Like, don't you need like a big set and lots of money and computer graphics with all this math that I'm scared of? And it was just no. And that was kind of the realization that I don't have to wait. I can start working on this right away. And so since then, I started just really diving into the behind the scenes of not big budget movies, but smaller budget movies. I bought all of, like, I bought Robert Rodriguez's book, which is actually a journal of how he problem solved his way through his first feature film. Like, whenever something went wrong, what would he use just around him to problem solve? And that a fire in me and made me realize, like, I gotta start working on this now. I gotta start doing things now. That's kind of where I'll pause and think, or if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, no, that's like I love those kinds of behind the scenes stories as well. Like I'm certainly not I have never really gotten into behind the filmmaking process myself, outside of like I've gone and been like an extra on a couple things here and there over the years, and I'll get like in the downtime while everybody's setting things up for a shot, I'll talk to like the DP or the cinematographer or whoever's like working on the shoot, and just kind of like pick their brain about like why they're making the choices they're making, because it's fascinating to me. But like I never took, even while I was doing school for theater, and like with the film classes going on like right across the hall, I just didn't take any of the film classes because I was like, I don't that's not what my focus is. That's not where my passion is lying. But yeah, like I certainly have an adoration for it, and I love kind of like we were talking earlier. I love the behind the scenes videos. That's why I still buy Blu-rays and DVDs and stuff, is because I want the special features where I can kind of see, listen to like the commentary and listen to kind of them talking about making the thing, but then also see the featurettes that they throw into to some of those projects to see stuff like the Jurassic Parks, see what it was like on set with nobody there, with like a tennis ball or something that's kind of serving as the eye line, and then see like all of the work that went into crafting all the features. One of my when you talking about kind of that feature immediately sparked in my head, I remember one of my first kind of like flirtations with it, where I was like, oh, that'd be a really cool thing to do, was like we took a field trip to see an IMAX movie, which was basically like behind the scenes of like big blockbuster movies, and one of them was specifically like the pyrotechnics teams behind Independence Day, talking about like making the miniatures of the White House or the Empire State Building, and so, like seeing all of the care and detail that went into making those little models just to blow them up, and then seeing it blown up just normal, like it like on the green screen or whatever, like from afar, and then like seeing what they did to make it look like it looks in the movie. I was like, that's cool, I want to do that. And then it didn't take, and it didn't last, but it was like I still have that vivid memory of seeing kind of that behind the scenes, and that being one of the first places where I had that same kind of realization, like, oh, that's right, like a lot of people make these things, that's really cool, and they're like, that is somebody's job, is to go make a model of the White House and just explode it on camera. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So have you, after like in high school, were you working on kind of projects with friends, or doing your, I mean, you said earlier in the episode, you talked about kind of, you didn't have actors to work with, so you guys became the actors for your own film projects. So what kind of stuff were you doing as you kind of started getting into it?
Yeah, that came later. Starting, I mean, I kind of got introduced to the whole idea of like, you can do this now. You can start, getting a camera and doing things on your own. But I ended up just for the first like freshman and sophomore year, it was more about research, just diving into behind the scenes, and not and just like really like sorry, I got distracted by the recorder. Kind of, I didn't really know the parts that made up a set, or like that made up making a movie, and so it was kind of, because like I said, I had this mindset that that's a thing that I will start learning in college. I didn't realize I could start learning it now as early as high school. And so for the first 2 years, it was mostly just like reacquainting myself with like, oh, there's like different departments and different jobs. But my first video production class wasn't until junior year, and I met a friend of mine who we're still friends to this day, 10 years later. He was like, even though I was like a year older than him, he was my mentor, because he, at his old school, had been doing short films and stuff, and we just kind of clicked immediately, and would start working on these school projects that technically they're like projects for English, but we kind of or projects for history or English or whatever, but we just barely had anything to do with the subject matter, and we would just like write out these short treatments and spend a weekend just breaking into construction sites and shooting these short films, and just asking favors from friends of friends, like, do you want to come help us out? Do you want to just stand with us? Like, you don't have to act, just wear this costume. And that was like what got me started. That's what that friend, Angelo, I'm just gonna say his name's Angelo. He's what pushed me from the theory and learning about filmmaking and the principles and how it can be done to the point where I'm actually doing it. And that's what I meant by, like, you know, we didn't have a lot of help, so like there were a lot of times that I ended up being in front of the camera and just hated the way I sounded. No.
Yeah, I mean, like I can appreciate that. It took a long time to be able to listen to myself in like the video recordings of the plays that I would do, that my mom would like record. It took a long time before I was able to just like not cringe whenever she would put them on for like family functions, and hear myself going on about being Theseus in A Midsummer Night's Dream or something, and just not being like, God, why did I say it like that? What was I doing? What was I thinking? It's that like it's that like super self-awareness and self-consciousness that I think we all go through. And then some people are, unless you're like super egotistical and you like don't have that experience at all, and good for you for skipping those steps. But yeah, it's certainly more of the norm than not. Like do you listen to Pockets of Soup, right? Pockets Full of Soup, Jared Petty's podcast.
Oh yeah. I still have a lot of episodes I need to catch up on, but I listened to some. But yeah.
Yeah, but so one of the questions he'll ask is kind of like a rapid fire question, is like, what's the first word that comes to mind when you think of the sound of your own voice? And everybody's like, the default reaction is just like, ugh, blah, or something like that, and like nobody likes the sound of their own voice. So, and they've been, you know, talking on camera or talking to people for years, some of them. So I like don't feel like you're alone in that regard, and that like there will be times where I'll still like I'll be listening back as I'm editing these episodes and just be like, what, like, do I really sound like that? Okay, I guess that's fine. Whatever. I'll get through. If other people are fine listening to it, I guess I can be fine listening to it. So you,
I hear you.
So you're doing it. You're kind of having these fun projects in school and really getting the practical applications of it, taking it from theory into actuality. And then so you did go to college for filmmaking, for film production as well. Is that what I heard?
Yeah. Before I get into that, just talking a little bit more about like the high school experience.
Oh yeah, sure.
It was just such an exciting rock and roll. Like I just built such a momentum in those short 2 years, like just working on these projects, because they were fun in general, but there was an extra added level of fun because everybody loved the videos except for the teachers. Because my friend, who, I mean, we worked together a lot, but like he was the creative driving force behind these plots that we wrote, and he was obsessed with like war movies and stuff. So that's why we would be breaking into construction sites, because that looks like World War I, World War II, and everyone is just like, wow, it's amazing, but the teachers are just like kind of like losing their hair, like, why do you have guns? Why are you? Because he had like really realistic looking guns, and we're just a bunch of punk kids, you know, just completely unsupervised and just like having a blast. And man, like if I can just make one side tangent in relation to that, we actually got in trouble once. We were out in the woods and we, you know, didn't practice very safe precautions, and so we didn't have any signs saying students working on a film. And so we like have a blood pack getting ready to explode to simulate someone being shot. And right before I pulled the trigger on this thing, like we just hear like, get down on the ground, get down on the ground. A bicyclist had seen us with our, I mean, rightfully so. Good thing on them that they called the cops, because I mean, any worried citizen should. a bunch of children in, when I say children, I'm talking about like 18-year-old, but like as a 28-year-old, 18-year-olds are children. Anyways, we have these airsoft guns that look very realistic, and we're all decked out in camouflage, and we're in the woods. Like, that looks very suspect, and so like,
yeah.
But usually we never get caught, and so I guess we get we let it get to our head, and so yeah, the cops came out, they were called on us, and they confiscated the guns, and to this day I always imagine, like, what if they had shown up like 1 second after I exploded that blood pack, like, you know.
Yeah, that's a little horrifying to think about, really. Like, oof, that could have just been the end right there. That's
but
certainly
like, the
not.
The danger and excitement of it was what kept me interested in pursuing that and wanting to take it seriously, like, and be like, you know what, like, I can do this for a couple more years, and if it means going to college, which was something I initially didn't want to do. I was like, the money I spend going to college, I could be spending on equipment or whatever, but like, it's important to my family, so like, if I'm going to go to college, then I'm going to do it for something that I know I'm going to be paying attention to. It's something I know I'm going to be engaged in. And so, yeah, I ended up going to University of Houston, and that's where I went to film school.
Awesome. And so what did you continue doing those projects on the side, or like while you're in school? I mean, did you get to do them as even more like class projects as you're going and doing the actual film school process?
Less so, because being in college, like, the quality of everybody's work definitely improves, and so there's an added level of stress. Like, for like in high school, we were at the top, and so being with other people that were at the top of their school, like, wasn't. And I didn't also there was the extra added that I didn't have my partner with me anymore, and so like I was on my own, and that just really stressed me out. So I definitely played it. I wasn't as dangerous in college. I was a lot more safe and would stick to mostly doing like events, musical performances and stuff like that. They weren't really narratives anymore. So they weren't really films. They were videos, but not story-driven films. And I actually forgot the question you asked.
Just kind of how did I guess you touched on it. How did the work kind of evolve in film school? So yeah, I think you kind of hit it, or at least, like, even if that's not what I asked, that's what I was going for. So we got it. We're all good. Yeah. So in the timeline of things, because I don't know, like, I'm trying to like piece together kind of, because I always forget how old everybody is. So you're late 20s.
Yeah, 28.
28.
I mean, I don't always remember. I always assume that I'm 3 or 4 younger than whoever I'm talking to.
That must be really weird when you're talking to Zyger. So in the grand scheme of things, there, where in all of this is where is this coming in when and tying into you going out to San Francisco and like shooting those first kind of videos at IGN or at their parties and stuff? Was that a few years ago, while you were still in there, or still in the college area, or is that like a couple years after college and you're just kind of out working and doing your own stuff?
Yeah, the IGN trip was probably my second year in actual like film school. Between high school and college, I did do like community college, where it's just like taking your core curriculum. And my video involvement during those years was, I mean, pretty small, because like I'm having to dedicate myself to work and school. Like I worked during high school, but now I don't know. You grow up and you start wanting to work more, so you can buy more things, and so the videos fell a little bit, but I mean, I think I lost the track of what you were saying again, but just like okay, so like yeah, remind me what you were asking.
I'm just trying to figure out the timeline of when. So you took a couple years off then, or you're not a couple years off, but you're in community college for some time, and then eventually when you start kind of in the film school program proper, that's when you also are getting more involved, or getting involved in the Beyond community a little bit, and going out and making it to San Francisco, shooting that first kind of video with them. So yeah, I think like we hit it. We're good there. In terms of like continued inspirations and whatnot, I'm curious kind of who you look to in the work that, like, what work do you admire out there? What work inspires you to kind of keep doing it? Like Robert Rodriguez seems like he was a pretty big impact. Do you continue like experiencing his stuff and finding new things that he's doing, and does he still excite you, or have you kind of moved into other tastes?
Yeah, I mean, he was the first director that I realized like that I actually paid attention to style. Growing up, you hear the name Spielberg, but to me that didn't mean anything. He makes movies that I like, but I am not paying attention to his style or anything like that. He's just a name. But Robert Rodriguez was the first like face to a name and style to a name that I could put together and made me realize, oh, director, this is what they do. Like, you just see him in cartoons yelling through a microphone, but like he's such a hands-on person that he has his hand in every piece of the production. And so I definitely admired him, and he was my first like favorite director. But as filmmakers grow, their styles change. He started doing. I just wasn't as big a fan of him anymore. Like, I'm still interested in him.
Like, you lost him at he lost you at Spy Kids and Shark Boy and Lava Girl or whatever. Those just didn't do it for you.
Yeah, I mean, I not story wise. I always did rent those so that I could watch his features, because no matter what film he did, whether it was something gritty and R-rated and bloody and sexy, or if it was a kids movie, he always like was very hands-on and was very transparent with viewers and had tons of behind the scenes. And so I always had value in, you know, his process. Even though I'm not a fan of his stories, I'm a fan of his process. And so I started gravitating to other directors. Tarantino, I mean, that's kind of a given. A lot of people really like him. But I mean, to talk about nowadays, probably I would say that Guillermo del Toro is my favorite actor. I mean, I don't know why I said actor. Director, in that now I'm much more looking. I'm purposely looking for inspiration, and his movies, although on the surface aren't the movies that I would typically like to say that I'm fans of. Like, I'm not a fan of horror, and he is usually he's a horror filmmaker, but there's something about his approach to horror that I find very interesting. He's a very visual director, and I think I'm in trying to discover what kind of filmmaker I want to be. He's who I gravitate towards now, in that I think I see myself as someone very visual. I mean, when I do these videos, I usually take the audio out. When I do these IGN videos or Kind of Fun videos, it's all about, you know, how can I portray the story without even words. And I think I just got that a lot from watching him and how he pays attention to image and emotion and color and stuff like that.
Yeah, awesome. I know we're probably running up on time a little bit with you with your audio there. So do you have any kind of final words we want to touch on before we dive into to Trove topics? I mean, like, I'm certainly fortunate in that I'll get to see you again in a few weeks, and we can like chat a little bit more about it just in person. But any final thoughts for the viewer or the listener on why filmmaking is such a special art form for you?
I mean, it's just that it's story. I'm a storyteller, and filmmaking is just an opportunity to tell a story multiple times, and that's why I think I gravitate towards it. Books obviously are stories, but like, you only get to do it one way. You write it, or, you know, musicians are storytellers, but there's just music. Whereas there's so many different ways to tell the same story in a movie. You're telling it through your actors. You're telling it through your sets. You're telling it through the dialogue, through the music, through the color choices, through the camera movements. There's just so many layers to how you are telling this story. And so, man, now I almost want to go on this whole other tangent, in that, like, you know, I'll try to boil it down like super small. In that every time I've ever
Well,
thought about doing another
like
career,
I would say
it's always been,
real quick,
it's
Christian.
always been.
I was just gonna say, like, if you want, like, feel free to go on this tangent, and we can certainly cut and do like the part 4. We can pick that up at some other time if we need to, because if your audio is gonna run out. So yeah, like give the full down. I definitely don't want to like cut you off prematurely. So yeah, kind of go
Okay.
where you're going, and we'll figure everything else out.
Okay, yeah. I mean, every time I've slightly put down, like, every time I've taken, I don't know if break is the word, but every time I get less enthused about filmmaking as I was growing up, it's because I'd be interested in another kind of career. And as I dived into this career, I was like, wait, like, I don't know, the only reason why I want to be in that is because, like, it realizes, like, it's because it's storytelling, and so I should just go back to filmmaking, and I'll be more specific with that. I used to want to teach, and it's because that same attitude I have about, like, if I don't like the way someone's doing something, I feel like I got to do it myself. I feel like I had a lot of bad teachers, and so I'm like, I should be a teacher and show them how it's done. And as I would just fantasize about having a class and how I would teach the War of 1812 or the War of the Alamo or whatever like that, like, I just realized that my approach to teaching, as I'm visualizing myself in a classroom, is through storytelling. Is that, yes, these things are dates in a book and there's bullet points, but like the best way to get across this knowledge is by giving it a story context, that these aren't just numbers on a page or names. Like, these are actual people that participated in history, who have a background, who went through their own story arcs. And I just realized that by the end of the fantasy, I'm like, you know what, I'm just verbally directing a movie. And this is like another career I'd always wanted, and it seems weird to use the word career, but there was a point where I did want to be a member of the clergy. I mean, I don't push it on people or anything. I don't bring it up in conversation a lot, but I am like I'm a Catholic, and I'm a practicing Catholic, and and sometimes you go to church and you're inspired, sometimes you're not, and I always and so there's that damn arrogance again of me thinking, like, you know what, if I was the priest, I would give this passage, I would really drive it home, talking about, how it relates to everyday life, how this particular passage can relate to people, and that I feel like this pastor just read from paper, whereas I would take another approach. And then before you realize it, I'm like, wait a minute, like, do I just want to be a clergyman because it's a weekly storytelling session? And I don't mean like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm not like, I still view myself Christian, but I certainly don't, like, I'm not at church every week or anything. And it's another thing, I also don't like push it on people or really kind of do that. But I was always fascinated with, like, the theatricality of it. And like, my mom and I would have conversations about how, yeah, I could probably pivot, like, acting into going out there and giving a sermon each week, and stand there under the very theatrical lighting, and have, the mic set up, and just do a weekly performance for an audience of hundreds of people who are, like, engaged and interested in whatever story you're telling. But ultimately I was like, it's not for me. But no, I appreciate that like, that's just another weird little, like, thing we kind of have in common. Because yeah, like, I'll still go to, like, Christmas services or something like that, and I'll just look around and enjoy the spectacle of the show sometimes, that is being performed, whether it's through the music that's going on, or, like, I will just look up and be like, yeah, like, I know those theatrical lighting instruments. Like, I hung those in the theater I was working in just last week.
Yeah.
And like, the amount, at times I'll be like, it's not fair that they have that much money and lighting equipment up there. Like, I'm working out of a freaking warehouse, like, on a shoestring budget, trying to do the show I want to do. So yeah, like, that's a interesting kind of correlation. I think that you also see that as, like, storytelling and the production of it, as kind of the value of that ritual a little bit. Cool. Uh, yeah. So I don't know how much time do you have left on your recording? Do you know? Are you able to tell? 20 minutes. All right. We can try and do some rapid fire. I think I've only got a few questions. So yeah, we can kind of plow through these. All right.